Hi everyone, welcome back into the studio. Well, today, I've been promising you another landscape, and I've also been promising you wildlife and Western stuff, but we're going to do a kind of a different variation. I have here a board, and I made a cradle board so you can see the thickness of it, and I've showed you these cradle boards before, like when I painted the German Shepherd lesson and stuff, and I showed you a little bit more in depth on those lessons if you want to refer to those. But it's a board, and then I gave it a coat of the Canvas Prep Medium, sanded it with 180 grit sandpaper. I've drawn kind of I want maybe, a hen here, and a couple of mallards, drakes taken off here, and a back mountain and some of the blue sky. I created a little sample of it over there you can see in Photoshop. I took many different photos, I put it together. Gives me kind of an idea. I think the sky's going to be a little bit too blue for what I want to do, and I want to make this a little bit more marshy and stuff, so we're going to play with it, this landscape. But it is 24 inches this way, and I did a board 16 inches this way. You could very easily, if you wanted to go to a standard 18 by 24, do that. But I wanted a little bit more of a landscape look to it, so it goes this way just a bit more. That's up to you, okay? You could also do this on a canvas, but I'm going to do these ducks a little bit small, and sometimes that weave, everyone asks me, can you paint on canvas? Absolutely. You can always paint on canvas. I don't always like it, especially if I'm going to do a lot of detail, some of this grasses and stuff up in the front, because I don't like fighting the weave. I do paint on canvases a lot, but usually when it's a little bit larger design, and that weave is not as important when you're, painting objects larger, of course, okay? So I do love the board. Okay, my palette is my standard palette. I do have out the medium beige here. This is a pre-mixed color, and it is one that I like to put out whenever I'm doing kind of landscapes. This whole last year, anytime I'm doing landscapes, I like to put that out and get it started. I have some extender medium. This is what I will start the painting out with. This is thinner. It will keep the painting wet. And then I have out some open medium here, the Matisse Dervan open medium, that I'll be using to do some of the forward areas, especially into the water. I love to mix the extender and open medium and get that sliding back and forth like I do into the painting here. So we'll start at that. Now I'm going to do it a little bit differently. Years ago I used to start, and I just want to show you, and I like to show you guys all kinds of techniques. I don't just paint with one thing. I'm a teacher before I'm an artist. I really am. I've always loved teaching. I've always loved learning things and then sharing it with you guys. I'm going to take the medium beige here, a little bit of blue, a little bit of burnt sienna here, and I'll make this kind of darker gray here. And I'm just going to use a small brush, just water. And I'm going to show you what I do here. I used to do this when, so I have my drawing on here, and I used to do stuff like this. And sometimes if you're a little bit shaky, this morning I'm a little bit shaky, just a little bit, and too much coffee, I think, this morning. And I got up real early in the morning too. That doesn't help. So I'm going to, and it doesn't have to be perfect. What I'm going to do, because I'm going to redraw and shape up a little bit, maybe give her a bit bigger belly here. This drawing, it doesn't have to be perfect. But what I do is I did a lot of really fun paintings years ago, and you can look it up. South for the winter and stuff, those are ones that, I had a flight of Canadian geese going by a mountain and rays of sun and stuff coming through. And I would come in and I would pre-paint in some of my objects before I start my sky. Normally you see me start the sky, and I would pre-paint in some of the objects here with a medium to darker value. And this is an old brush, so I'm not getting any edges. I don't want any edges to this. This is just an idea. And then I pre-painted in with the acrylic, let it dry, so it gives me an idea. It preserves my drawing, but it also puts on the element. And then I will wash the sky, ground, everything else around over this and soften. This one is not as important. That female up there is very important. And so, but this allows me to preserve my drawing here, but I will wash the colors over it. and that would soften them out and put the sky or ground or whatever it is to it back and forth, and it starts this real soft little edge to the painting, which just works wonderful later on. So I'm going to show you that up over here. We'll take a 3/4 inch brush. We'll take some medium beige. And maybe this is, you know, of course here it's medium beige and a little purpley color. So let's just head towards that little purplish color, medium beige, a little bit of this, a little bit of white, and I want to come up right around a value 6 or so. Let's see where I am. I'm right on a little darker than a 6, so just a touch lighter here. And I will pre-paint in the mountains here. And let's just add water, just water, just water. That's all we want. And so I'll put in, and very, very brush sketchy here. No other word for it here. And I have to decide my light. In here, the light is coming basically from the front. See the shadows there from the clouds onto the mountains this way. So the light's coming in this way. I might bring it in this way here. So it'll be a bit different. And again, the photos I like just as a reference. That's all. I don't like to copy because then it locks in my creativity, and I don't like to do that in any painting that I do, really. I used to do it for years when I was a realist painter, but I don't like doing it anymore. So I'm just going to do this, and this blocks in basically some of these mountains. I want to have these back mountains, kind of like hills. I want them to have some interest into the painting. So before I even do the ground here, I'm going to put them in, and then I'm going to put the sky right over it, okay? So let's do some horizontal, some linear perspective here. Horizontal work, right? So that's going to come forward here. Maybe a little bit, let's add just a touch of beige to this. Coming forward here, a little light color, a little wash over it. We'll go right over, because these guys are dry now, because I'm using pure acrylic. It dries really quickly. So we'll push some of that right into here. That'll work. So this is, I don't think I've shown this on the channel for a number of years. This is the way I used to start stuff. And I loved it because it does give a lot of depth and stuff to it. And it helps you, those of you that are beginners, you could transfer on birds and stuff like that, or any kind of detail that you want, rocks, anything. And you can preserve your drawing this way. So that works pretty good that way. So I get a feeling for that, even though it's all light through here, I get a feeling that how this is going to work here. And of course I would want to make, you know, this one up here darker. You could do that right now, but it's not really all that necessary. Now, let's go in. Okay, so we have that. Now let's go in. And let's take our blue, and this is more of the sky that's there's more of a blue-green, which I like, but you got these kind of purpley mountains and all this other kind of color. So I'm going to shift it over to a blue-violet. So I'm going to add Phthalo Blue and the red violet or Quinacridone Violet. Any one of them will work. Let's go over, let's even add in a touch of this beige into that to tone that down. This is right in here is about a value 6 or so. So maybe 6 or 7, it'll dry down like that. Let's mix up a little bit more of that here. It's close here. And this might be the top of the sky, just a touch more violet. I'm going to have a lot, and one of the reasons for it was violet, is I'm going to have a lot of warmth up into the front of the sky, up in the front of the painting. And I'd love the sky slightly cooler back up there. So I get a nice warm cool. That's just my preference on this one. Okay. You can do anything. So that works pretty well. We'll add some more white to it right down here into the front. And we can start thinning that out. I think this, I want to get it up. Matter of fact, before I use all of my white up, because we're going to use white quite a bit, let's just put out a little bit more here, and mix this up, because I'm going to do some fun things with you as far as the water and everything is concerned. So we'll need some white. So that's got this right up here, right up by a 9 or so, kind of right what I want to do along the horizon line. So I'll use that. I'll just wipe my knife here for a second. I'm going to grab my old 2-inch brush. I'm going to put some extender in it here, and we'll mix some of this extender up, thinning out this blue a bit here. And we're going to come right up over, and we'll go right up over everything here. And I used to love to do this because immediately what it does, you could see, is it takes the mountains and everything right to the back. And you don't have to worry about painting around or trying to save, or, you can sit there and, put your birds on and stuff later, your wildlife on later. But you could do this, and this works really nice. Just take a couple of minutes and do that. And of course, this will, as this dries, the mountains and stuff, we'll watch this, the mountains and stuff start coming forward a little bit more. So you put it on pretty heavy. So let's get some of this up here. And I love to use, those of you who watch me a lot in landscapes, I love to use small X motions like this, especially as I get up into the sky, because it starts giving it atmosphere. Then we'll go a little bit darker up here, and the paint is just a little thicker, a little extender in it here, right up here like this. And I'll put some of the blue greens in there, but I want it mostly to head to blue violet. And I'll walk this down a bit, creating some of that atmosphere. We're going to create some clouds and stuff like that as well. We'll push this on. And these are I showed you in that German Shepherd that I painted, how I use these boards now to lock in my board. So it's not it's just sandwiched between these boards, and they're clamped up onto the sides. I love that system. You can see it here. I love that system. I can adjust it, move it, do whatever I want. Before I've used screws. I've tried all different kinds of things, especially this last year, and I really love that. Let's take some of that and a little bit of our phthalo here. We'll add some extender to this, and we'll add slowly into this a little bit of our phthalo to give some nice variation into that sky. I love the atmosphere and the movement and variation of colors. Keep it light along the horizon line, and then just work some of that color down. See, I love the variation into the sky that you get there. Let's take some of this right down into here. This is going to be our sky and water down here. Let's take some extender. We'll be mixing all these colors again, and they don't have to be exact because we're going to use a lot of different values and tones in it. So we'll just no edges. In other words, I don't want to have like an edge of texture or anything, so I use my paper towel and rub off the edge, because we're going to paint like a marshy kind of area here that the ducks are lifting off of. And so we don't want to have an edge. We want to have some different lights and darks and reeds and stuff coming in. We'll just tap some of that back through like this. It gets light, sky and water gets lighter as it goes to the background. So we'll just tap some of that through. We're going to let that fade away back up in there. A little bit, maybe just a little bit heavier here up into the front here. And this is just a setup. We're going to let this dry. Of course, it will dry. And then we'll come back and work it again. But we want to get that. This is going to give us our first look at our depth. So we do want to get this, down around a 4 or so here in the very front, value-wise, down around a 4 or so, which means you make kind of a 5 and it dries down to a 4, because acrylics dry a little bit darker. Somewhere down in there is a good start, maybe even a little darker here, just a little bit darker. Yeah, that's a good color right in there. And that is, that's your 4. So you look at that, that's your 4 right there, right? So, and we'll just model this through a few horizontals. When you're painting water, you pull down to give it reflections and stuff, which we will, but this is just the first kind of light to dark color setup for us. We could take a little bit of that. You don't want too much, but a little bit of that, because I love the the plane of the sky and the water here. A little bit of that through there, just like that. Now, on the sample, let me just rinse that out of the brush here quite a bit. On the sample up there that I have there, a lot of sky, a lot of clouds. And this is the, like a judgment that you have to make as an artist. I could, there's a lot of stuff, right? You've seen me paint beautiful clouds into the sky and stuff. And then there's times where I use more wispy and not as much, and more palette knife, very soft. That depends on the subject. Now, I want your eye down here. I don't want it up here in the sky. I want it down here with these two males and the female here taking off. So, and I want reeds and motion and stuff like that. So I'm not going to do big, powerful, billowy clouds. Does that make sense? I'm going to do more wispy clouds. So I'll take my white. I'm going to add some open medium to it. Some of these dirty colors, maybe a little bit of the gray, the brown in it. And it'll drop its value down a bit, down to an 8 or a 9 here. But I want this open medium in it. I want it slightly thicker. I'm going to use my knife here, and I'm going to use this to impart the cloud here that I want here. I'll put maybe a bit bigger up here, and it hits all that wet, but see, it sticks. That's what you want, guys. You want this to stick like that, see? And it's thicker. So the blue that's up here is thinner, okay? And this is going to be thicker, so it's going to stick. And so we'll maybe put another cloud unit right up over here. Not too many, because this isn't going to be a painting of the clouds. This is going to be a painting of the ducks, right? So we'll put one of those over here. Maybe I do like that one that's there towards the back that just kind of fades away back there. I do like that here. Maybe up over towards the female, she might just break some of that a bit right there. Now, what do you do here? Well, two ways. One in which I'll wipe my knife and I do what I call burnish, is I use the knife flat like this to pull through and soften. That gives you wispy clouds like that. You can see that really nice. Gives you all these little bits of softer clouds like this. I call this burnishing them down here, right? Simple. Keep it simple. These are, or you could, and if you have problems with it, if you're an acrylic painter or something like this and you're not used to wet on wet, that's all really, really wet. You have time, okay? You have time. It is much easier if you let it tack up a bit, okay? Let it tack up a bit, then you don't have to be quite so, it's very, very soft with it, because the paint starts to get a little bit tacky, gets harder to move, and then you can push a little harder. As you get more experience, your touch becomes softer. Does that make sense? Now, I'm going to use my big brush that I just used, and which means I've been sitting here as I'm talking to you, pinching the water out of it, because I can't have any water. I will pull right through that real quick. And so I don't want to do that. So my brush has to be really dry, or grab a new dry one. And then you can just lightly pull through like this, and that will create the wispy part of the cloud for you, see? So I'll just pull through lightly here like this, just to lightly say, there's that cloud. Maybe a little angle. Sometimes I pull down like it's being windswept or a little bit there, something like that. Sometimes I do that. Okay, so it just does it real soft. Then, now we'll pick up more white, some open medium into the white. Then we'll come up to where our light is coming. So our light, we're going to bring in this way. So I'll come up where my light source is, and I'll hit the cloud again on the light side. So this one right here will be hit right in here with the light. Does that make sense? So it'd be hit on the right side. So this over here will be hit right up over here on this side, this part of the cloud, maybe a little bit down there. A little bit back here, maybe along the horizon line, a little lighter, just a bit. Back up over here, maybe there's a little edge of it there, right? Just a wispy edge of it. Now, some artists, the really impressionist artists would leave it like that, and I do like that. I'm going to use a dry brush, I think, this time. Soft, drier brush, because it won't move quite as fast with a drier brush. And I'm just going to go through a couple of times. I want to leave some of those little wispy marks there on those clouds, see? Just to hit just lightly, like your little butterfly, just lightly touching it. And that's giving you this little bit. Now you can use your brush and put in all kinds of stuff, but I do love the palette knife. I do love manipulating the palette knife here. Back and forth, I get some of those wispies there. That makes, you know, this natural look to the cloud that I really like. Let's take a little gray in that and just pull that right along there like it's being pulled out just a bit here. There we go. Just a little wispy. You could put some more up there, but I do kind of like it. I like over here it has every once in a while these little spots that show up, and you know, you can put some of those on there because you do that, and then we'll just pull through here. And it looks like this little top wispy little bits of cloud up there like that. And if one's too much, you could just push and take it and soften it out until you get what you like. You can pull down slightly at a slight angle to give a windswept look to the cloud here. So a little bit of an angle here. We'll just pull that. Now, in other clouds, you'll see, I'm going to leave these as real kind of desert high summer clouds, right? This is actually heading kind of into the fall time. You know, I would build bigger ones with you know, shadow colors and stuff underneath. You see shadow colors underneath. You've seen me do that. And I would just drag a little shadow back up underneath. But if you do high cirrus or real wispy kind of clouds, they don't have the depth to them to give them the shadow underneath. These clouds have a little bit of depth to them, so it gives a shadow. So if I built this cloud up here a little bit more, let's say I wanted to build this cloud up here a little bit more heavier, like right up here, I might consider pushing a shadow underneath it. Does that make sense? A little bit of the darker gray. Now, you know, and I don't know if I really want to do that. This is always something you can come back on too, right? We can always come back on this and do it again. So let's just wispy this out a bit here. Here we go. Just leave that kind of wispy like that. But you would put a little bit of shadow. And then if you put on shadow, I turn around and then I put light back on top. I always like the light to sit on top of the shadow. Even though in clouds, you can go both. And I've showed you that going both. Okay, so there you go. So there you have some of that. Let's take some of this light with this and our knife. And let's just deposit that. This is just using up some of this color. And that's what's going to happen to the water back here. As we go back, it's just going to go light, and we might just have that disappear back up over there. And a little bit of this, boom. This, you know, you would want to put in, you know, some of your clouds and stuff that you would have down here. You would put reflections of them down here. It's a little too soon to do all that, but you can see that. Now, you can see how your bird, see, she's there. You can pull her back because she's dry underneath. You can pull her back to see some of the colors or push it to keep it soft. But I could build up the colors here and she would be softer, more atmospheric because she already has the atmosphere on her. Does that make sense? It works really, really well that way. Let's just take a little gray and push this a little softer right there. A little more soft and further back into those clouds here. And it's all thickness. So when you're painting the clouds, you want the cloud color to be a little thicker than the sky color, and then you get all these beautiful, real quick little clouds. Okay, so that's that. So let's go to our 3/4 inch brush, and let's start first. Let's go over here. Let's grab some of our burnt sienna. We want a bit of violet into some of this, so some violet, burnt sienna, a little bit of this color, a little sky color here. And let's look at pulling here the shadow side, which is the left side of the hill. And I want to just tap that. I don't want to create too much edges or textures or so, because that's going to pull it forward. Does that make sense? But, you know, this is cloud shadow sitting on top of that mountain there. In other words, the sun is being blocked by a cloud, and that's the shadow falling down on top of that. I don't think we need to go that dark, but let's put one right back here. This one in the photo has a little bit of a point to it, so we'll give a bit of that. And so what we'll do is we'll work basically the left side of all these hills as they come down through here. We'll think of sloping to the left as shadow. Sloping to the right is going to be the light. We'll put a bit of this in there like that, just for some back interest. That might be too dark back up there. So let's just take a little beige and a little bit of light here and just push that in a bit. I don't want to make it too rounded up. I want a few jaggedy little peaks and stuff in there, so that keeps that interest in there, right? So just a bit of that back there. Let's put that shadow in back there again, right like that. That's good. Tap, this is just my 3/4 inch brush, and so we're concentrating. Now see, that's a little dark, so I just slide over, pick up just a touch of light. I don't take it off, I just tap and paint through it. Sometimes the mountain gets a little higher, that's okay. You know, and sometimes it'll stay a little lower. Let's just keep tapping in and creating that interest to those hills right there. That works. Now we'll come over to the light side. We'll warm it up. A little yellow, a little burnt sienna, maybe just a touch of our blues and stuff into that. Some whites. We'll create the light side. And I want this modeled. In other words, I want the colors to come off a little different. If you want to make it more like the summer, you might add some greens or something to it. You know, if you're painting up into the north, you would add some greens and stuff to make towards the you know, trees and stuff like that. But I'm just going to whisper this over these sides here and just get some of that color, that warmer color. It's still down there in value. It's not the highlight yet. This is the first low light of the hills here. So I'll drop some of that in. And let's drop a little bit back here. That's too much, too low. A little bit onto that here. Drag some of that through our ground here, just like that, right? And you can have open medium or you could have extender. My thought is I'm further back into the painting, so I use extender wherever possible, wherever I can. Now, I'll go back sometimes and touch smaller little bits that will give more interest. Depends on how much interest. I've got to be kind of careful though. What have we got right there next to that? We have her, and so we don't want to do such beautiful, perfect little ridges and mountains back there. That's going to take away from her. We want those to set back. So we'll be a little bit careful here on just how much we do here. And tap some of that in there like that. That's pretty good. Let's go a little bit lighter. Now we'll hit to the highlight of it, you know. And these highlights, let's do this to make it easier. Let's go down to like our number 10. So our number 10 will get quite a bit smaller on our highlights. Let's even add a little open medium, just a bit here. And let's be more specific here. We'll look for the little planes that would be on the hill here, like this. Here, like this. There. That will give more of the ridges and the edges and stuff like that. So here, like that. Just the lights through. So basically onto the the right side of these. We'll put some on there. We'll come back and pull a little bit more. Slightly lighter, different here, like that. Just really fun, simplistic ways to paint back hills and stuff, right? That's what I like to do. And let's pull some this way. Creates that light on that hill. Especially looks great when you come up against that shadow, because you can tap and push and make it look like little ridge lines and stuff. That's when it's really great. Let's add a little more yellow, a little bit of white, some beige, a bit of open medium into this. And you might consider, and I will, doing this. I love the knife. I love the interest from the knife, but your value's got to be pretty good. So I love the interest of sliding the knife like this, and because I can get dry and get this, the fractured edge. I love the fractured edge of it because that adds even more interest really quickly. So I want to get a nice stroke this way. Don't want to make it too long, but I want to get a nice stroke right there that emulates maybe a little more beige into this right back up here. So it's a little different, softer color right there like that, right? I love painting like this, guys. This is so much fun. But you can't go back and forth. You'll blend it and then you'll lose your interest. Does that make sense? So you have to use what I always tell my students, a little bit of restraint. Okay, tap it along a bit there. Tapping sometimes gives a little texture, which will give you some really neat interest. Let's put this sloping plane up here, even though it's not on the photo. Let's slope that plane up there like that. We'll pull that shadow out at that angle as well. That'll give it a nice, nice slope. Let's give another little slope right up in here. Right up like that. Nice, gentle little slope, right? That looks pretty good. I love that. Now, you could, this photo that I have there has a lot more light-dark contrast. And I can always add more. That's the beautiful thing. I can always add more. But I'm not sure I want to on this painting. So I'm going to approach it a little bit soft. Plus, acrylics dry darker. You have to keep that in mind. Let's take a little bit of the beige and burnt sienna, a little bit of these blues, and let's just add some shadow interest up here. And colors I took out some of my water by mistake there, but let's pull some of this into, because you will have lights and darks and shadows even in these polling planes here, right? And I'll go back and forth a bit to get some of that interest, right like that. That looks good. Maybe just a bit here. Here. The colors, I'm watching the colors and everything. I'll go a little bit more yellow and beige and burnt sienna. Maybe a bit of the blue. Back up over there, I like another little hill right here. I like that in that it gives the feeling of another plane coming in there. Let's take some of that color, maybe a little bit of sky. Blues and stuff will cause it to recede slightly. So we'll push a bit of that color showing up back there. Right, just like that. That looks pretty good. We could have a bit of a light plane. Let's just make a bit of the light plane here. There we go. Just shows that up a bit. But this comes in a little darker right up over here. The top of that hill there. Coming this way, pulling down. Let's put, now in the photo it shows quite a bit more dark right over there. But you could also pull that hill. If you don't want to get that dark, you want to keep a lot of depth, push the difference there with the light. So I'll make that hill, this front hill, come farther forward with some textures and some darks. I will bring it forward instead of what I see in that photo, which is the light. Like I say, I change the stuff. I change it. And I like to do that. I like to, because I'm going to watch this as this plays against my ducks there and some of the other elements in my painting. And so I want to watch that just a bit. I'm going to blur that back edge back there. Watch how that sends that further back, see? So I like that a little better. I'm not too worried about that little point. As a matter of fact, I might take my knife and add just a little bit of color here. Right in there, that brings that point of that mountain, just a touch more detail, maybe a bit. That might be too much right there. But it wouldn't be if I was doing more colors. Does that make sense? I'm just going to soften that just a bit. Yeah, I like that. See, it's a little bit more. Let's just add a tiny bit. So I'm looking at the darks and the lights and stuff, and right around where it's going to be in her, I'm going to pull the viewer's eye into here. So watch what happens when I do right in here, put that shadow. Your eye starts to pull right to that little point a little bit more, see? And it's all variation like that. That's what we're doing, all this variation. Let's take this soft brush and this light, and let's just let this disappear back here, right? We'll just let all of that disappear right back there. Maybe that's coming right back from that little valley right there, and we'll just let it fade away back there, right? Just like that. Let's pull some of that out. We'll paint all of that up in there. But see, it gives this beautiful little soft little thing of the mountain. Isn't that kind of fun? I like doing that. All right. So let's come in now. We'll work a little bit more into our ground and stuff up here. And I want to work it. I'm going to go wet into wet, and I'm going to put in some reeds and stuff, and then we'll start really painting our birds and stuff. But first, let's get in some of our blues and burnt siennas, blues, some beiges here. We're going to start working. We want to keep this a little bit on the burnt sienna yellow side here, right up in here. Get some of this coloring, and we'll drag some of that right, and I'll just pull it off of him a bit. I'm going to paint a wet edge here. So a little extender, a little open medium here. And we're going to do a lot of up and down as well. So I'll start some of my up and down marks here as well, down into the water a bit. We're going to paint the marshy lands here. So we'll go a lot of verticals, some horizontals as you get further back, but a lot of verticals in there. Let's go a little darker here. As I go darker, I like to go more transparent. That's a good landscape thing. So I'll get a little bit more transparent as I add some of these darks in there, especially right up here into the front, right? Little bit more transparent right up in here. There we go. Sometimes I put this on. I will take a large amount, put it on with the knife. Your big thing is you don't want to set up patterns or rhythms, right? You want to break it. You don't want any patterns or rhythms. So I'll take some of this, model this all together, and let's go slightly more burnt sienna. A little yellow here, and pull it on, slide it around like this, because this is going to give you all the broken little edges of the marsh and the water and the marshlands coming together here, right? And we will wiggle the brush, move it around. We're going to do, and don't, put on more. I've always said to you guys, I put on a lot, and then I come back and paint out, right? That's what I like to do. This is what keeps that casual edge to it. So I like to paint it on more than I think, and then I'll come back and we'll soften it out and add some blues and stuff like that into it as we paint this marshland here. So add on more. Go down into the water here. Doesn't hurt it. We're going to put water right back up in front of that. Matter of fact, let's just rinse that brush a little bit, not too much. When you rinse your brush in water and you're doing a wet in wet technique, I put it back into extender here to help get rid of some of that water. Now, let's come back immediately first with some of our violet blue colors of our water here, slightly different, and we'll pull up and into these marshlands here, right like this. Paint this wet edge. So sometimes the brown goes down into the blue, sometimes the blue goes down into the brown, and then we'll repeat the blue and brown again here. We're crossing them. Sometimes you get a dirty color in there, grayer, and that's fine. That just makes it look like maybe there's reeds underwater and stuff. So it's all good. All good here. And some open medium, a little bit of extender here, here. And I'll drag this through here and pull up and down a bit here. Drag that just a bit. Sometimes I use my paper towel and I pull them through. I'm looking for just lots of variations to the colors. Does that make sense? Here, not to set up a pattern at all, right? Variations to the colors. And let's get a little darker here. Right up into this front. Maybe a bit of burnt sienna into that. So it's a little bit not quite as bright. Right up in here. There we go. Pull that through. Soften some verticals, some horizontals. Right in there, right? Right in there like that. So it's really pulling the water here quite a bit farther forward, right? So far so good. And we'll put some other reflections, some other lighter colors here, and get a clean paper towel here, right? And there's all different kinds of ways as you start to set this up that you can work the lights and stuff into the water. But let me just show you. I like to use combinations of the brush and the knife back and forth. So I'll make some real light kind of sky, because water is sky, right? And I'll just pull back like this and slide this in and out and around the reeds here like that, right? Here maybe a little, change the blue a bit, a little bit more blue here. You want these undulating edges. Sometimes pull up and down a bit, wiggle it. I love to do this with the knife. If I'm painting a reed edge or something like that, I love to paint it with the knife because it gives you more undulation than a brush does. Here, right? We'll pull this up a bit like that, a little bit of high and low there. A little bit right in here, right in there. There, pull that down a bit. Right, like that. Some blue, a little bit more blue, violet. Right up, prettier color right in there. And let that just kind of push together with that light. Let it fade away a bit. Back there. There we go. See, and this is, if you're painting realism, like a realism landscape, you would be reflecting some of those clouds down in here. Well, I'm not going to do that here. I'm going to let this, just these edges soften up like that. That looks pretty good. Let's come back, reset some of our yellows, burnt siennas, some of the browns right in here. Let's reset some of that. And this is where you can, I mean, you've seen me do all kinds of grasses. Like I'll push in and up like this with grasses as I start to switch from just areas of color into painting grasses. I love to take like my 3/4 inch brush back and forth like this, and I'll go back and forth with the water and everything to create these edges. You can also use something like this. These are really cheap China brushes you can get at like a Walmart or something, and just use the edges, the tips of these. Let's just add, especially with you beginners, this is really a great way to do it, because you can get a nice look fairly simple with this. See, you can get just a real nice simple little look. I'll use them to start some edges and stuff like that. They're wonderful. I've showed you in other videos where I take them and bend them out all different kinds of ways. This is one way of doing it, to get some of those interests and stuff like that to it. But when I'm still this early into the painting, I like to stay with my brush as long as possible, because I love the variation that this brush gives. And this is what I like to do. Push and tap and push up and create these edges like this that create all kinds of different edges. And I'll pull my paper towel down into the water a bit. Sometimes I'll let that just come right down like a reflection, right down into the water here. I'll put on some light, and then I'll come back and pull up some shadow, darks like this into it, painting back and forth here. And I love the uneven look of the paper towel as I start those edges and stuff. And I will spend quite a bit of energy down in here getting some of that, because this is what's going to give you ultimately the greatest interest in your painting, is getting some of that interest right down in here as well. Okay, so I'm going to build that back and forth several times as I do this. And especially, I mean, I'll come back in with a softer, maybe a little thinner blue, clean some of this up and pull like this as reflections. As I'm pulling, as I start to work the reflections part of it, or the smoothing of the water right in there like that, I'll start doing that. That's the smoothing of the water. Slightly different color, maybe a little bit of the violet. And I'll thin it out. When I want to do the smoothing of it, I add extender and I'll thin it out. You've seen me in other rivers, I'll use extender and open medium together. You know, your job is to try all kinds of different things and see what you like, what fits your hand. And I love this. And I'll pull some of that back up in here. Maybe some of this is just reflections from the water there. And I'm going to put some more reeds down in here, because that's where we should have some, right down in here. And maybe I do it with a different brush, right? Maybe I use this to create some of those reeds right up in here, right across through here. Pull some of that down right in here. Right in. You just want these, you just don't want a defined edge. Does that make sense? You want this undulating edge of stuff, and high and low here, because that's what makes it look like the marshlands. You want these undulating edge. Sometimes right out through here, like you might have some of that dark appear right up in here into the water again, right out there. Maybe not that far out, Dave. And so it's going to create back and forth like this, is going to create that marshland, and maybe pull across a bit, which will blur this and make this look like the water. So I'll blur this right in here. But sometimes I will leave it more harsh, like it is, reeds right in the water, right? So, and you can say, just watch. I mean, very simply, I can make this look just like water by taking a tiny bit of light and pushing it right against the edge, right there. Matter of fact, let's do that. The fun way to do it is with your knife. and you take just a tiny bit of that light blue here, and you would push that right against the edge here, right like that, and that gives you your water's edge right there like that, see? And so that's the way I first learned. Then I started doing it a little different. I don't do it everywhere now. I just kind of drag it through a bit here and there in some areas. Some areas I'll put on a little bit more. I'll blur it maybe a bit. Pull down. It's, you know, I get to do it all different kinds of ways now. And I'll use some of this as like little lights, you know, into little ripples and stuff into the water here as well. That looks pretty nice in there like that. Okay. So before I get going here too much, let's take some of our yellows, burnt siennas, some of these grays here, burnt siennas, some of our browns here, burnt sienna, some of this, thin it out here, and let's work back in through here. Still can see my mallards here, so don't want to do it where I can't see them. We'll push some of this. This will, you know, you could put some blues and stuff in there as more marshlands if you want, right? And we'll just pull that, wipe that back just a bit here. Now in the photo, it gets very yellow and stuff in there. And I can do that. See if I like that. We'll add some yellow oxide, medium beige, some extender. Thin, you can start adding this and see it takes it a little bit more yellow in there. And see if you like that. That little bit of yellow fall kind of casting color there. If you like that. That color coming in here. You'll need to do a few up and downs as we start to emulate some of the reeds and stuff, because this is all marshland. So we'll emulate that a bit right in there, right? But staying pretty soft. Maybe a few blurry little edges. Just see, I love the 3/4 inch brush. Just pounce on it and it does that. Pretty nice. Let's take a little yellow, burnt sienna, and some white, a little thicker, some open medium, and let's add a little bit of that right out in here to these reeds in here. Right? There we go. Some of that tone. Especially like right in front of this guy, because we're going to be making them in just a minute. Maybe a few little touches into the water there. Some of that pulling up here. Pull down, up, get some variation to it, right? Get some of the lighter color in here. We'll do some more, but this is a good start. Here. Good start. And use the edges of your brush. You know, it gives that nice variation there. I love that variation here. I'll go back and forth on these, especially over here on this front side, several times to create that. So I've got a pretty good extent. I mean, I want to get more darks and all that stuff in here. But before I go too far, let me just break this up a bit. You just need some linear perspective, just little taps back here to make it look like it's reeds. You might want to put a little bit of water over there. That actually might look kind of neat. So we'll go with a lighter blue here. You might want to just drop in the idea of a little water right over here. You know, just the idea of it, little lighter blue here. Try to get it about that, a little bit more violet into it. Here. A A little more violet. Let's see if we like this. We don't know. Let's just try. And we'll put some, because this is kind of like little marshlands we want. Little rivery marshlands here. Maybe a bit of that out there. Bit of the light here. Yeah, that looks kind of neat. Kind of carries that blue back down up over there again. And we'll just drag some edges here. Just break the edges here. It just has to stay soft over there. Its job is, you know, just to stay soft. And sometimes I'll take this thick and I'll drag it on like this. And this is how I do the prairie sometimes. Then I take a paper towel and I drag through it. Here, put the thicker on and drag through it. I love that look through it. So, and this is how you see me do the prairie many times, right? I love that. And so we can do some of that, put on some of that like right in here and just pull up some of the grasses here, just like that. Pull up some of those grasses and then we'll put water up right next to it. It looks pretty cool that way. Something about the paper towel. Yeah, we buy all these brushes and stuff, and then a paper towel just looks amazing. Let's put a little darker violet, blue violet, some light into this. Here, just tap in some of this light into there. And that could, you know, just very well be, you know, we can take our big brush and we pull down, right? That gives you, you pull down, that gives you a reflection, and then side by side, side to side, just a touch, and you'll reflect some of that. Looks pretty neat. Just undulate your colors back and forth and stuff going on there, and you're going to make the reeds. But we'll go back and work on that. We're going to take a smaller, let me see, I had one here, a smaller, I'm going to use a smaller little synthetic here, and of course, I left a touch of paint in it, so I get to clean it out here. Small little synthetic here, filbert. I like that. It's a little stiffer. It's going to give me a lot of control. We're going to paint her and stuff just really, really simplistic. She's brown, but you get a good brown, burnt sienna, a little bit of blue. She's going to fit in quite nice up there. Maybe a little bit of our medium beige here. Keep her very, very simplistic here. And softer edges. Don't make her into a pelican there, Dave. And but very simplistic. A little bit of variation to the colors here. And just kind of sketchy, kind of almost like I'm sketching her again. And I'll blur, she's further back, so I'll blur her just a bit, right? I might put she has a beautiful darker burnt sienna and yellow kind of tip to her head here, so I might add just a bit of that right in there. Small little variation there. And yeah, and I'll take some, sometimes because this is the violet starts to dry up, if I want to clean her up, I just take a tiny bit of water and blur that edge just a bit. But that is still a touch wet, so I could lift it. So I'll put a little bit of violet in it, light violet, and paint back into her just lightly to soften her look, right? And then we'll come back in, a little burnt sienna, the blue, right in here. She has, let's see, this wing pulls the front, this one goes to the dark, to the back. And again, I'm going to paint her very soft here. Just some of the, maybe a little yellow in with that. Burnt sienna and white. A little lighter color right back here. Light's hitting the edge of this wing. Just suggest it here. Edge of the wing. So in other words, I'm not going in there and doing flight feathers and all that kind of stuff. I'm just going to just suggest everything here. There, like that. And if I feel like it's too much, I'll just blur it slightly. Not blend it, blur it. Blur it a bit. There we go. And some of the burnt sienna and this color. This is going to be right down the front here. This is the wing closest to us. Here. There. Little bit of that blue with the burnt sienna cools it off and makes it a bit more brownish gray here. If you want to go more of a brown, you go the pine green in that burnt sienna. But I think this will work pretty nice for her right in there. Right like that. And keep her as simplistic as possible. She has a little touch of the whites, light colors here. Like I say, I keep her simplistic here and impressionistic. It's the right word. There. And I'll paint back and forth. Sometimes I'll do this like little bits on her with my knife, and that works really well. You have a little light band out by the tail, and you're not going to paint a light band. You're just going to touch a little bit of white. That's all. And she has her legs folded up. The Diarylide is a perfect little orangey color for just the emulation of the legs there. Just a little mark for her legs. You might want to touch just a tiny mark of that into her beak and stuff there. Right? Now, I could pop her off a little bit more, and this is a personal call, but I can pop her off a little bit more. You know I do it in other birds and stuff. I do what I call a negative paint. And I'll look at that. That's too blue. I want to go just a bit more violet and a bit lighter. Here, let's just wipe some of that extra paint off. And a little bit lighter yet. Boy, that's really light down along that mountain line here. And so I'll just lightly come in just a bit. It pops her off a bit. Here, I'll actually, in some areas, blur her out a bit too to soften her. So I might even rinse my brush out really well like I just did, and then pinch wipe it so all the moisture's out of it, and then just pull down like this to softly blur some of her edges there. Blur some of these colors and stuff together here because she's further back here. And so she becomes more impressionistic, if that makes sense. Little bit of dark up here at the top of the head here, and then down this side just a bit. There we go. So I'm painting her very impressionistic, right? So maybe, and in the photo, she has a little bit darker band right here. Well, they have those bands here, so let's just emulate that. We'll see. We always come back. You know I do. I always come back and look at her after I get the others on. So she's a good one to start out with. Let's get just a bit of that dark right there. Coming right back down there. That looks pretty good. She looks softer in there. That's what I want. Let's soften this light right here on the roundness of her head. There. There we go. Oh, that's much better. You put just the tiniest little roundness to that, and it looks so much better on her. Let's take just a touch of that light. There. Like that. That works pretty nice. That looks pretty good. Here. Just a touch here. There we go. Okay, let's go do these guys. let's get that blue burnt sienna here. And which the brownish is, really part, the undercoat for the whites and stuff. So we'll start doing his big wing here. He's in the wings are folded up into a V as he's taking off here. So yeah, we want that, and let's put that. So that's the big forward one here. A little tip, which I didn't draw in, which I'll do now, back here for that back side there. One on the other side. Let's go with a medium beige here into the majority of his body, which will blend right there into the ground a bit, so that's okay. Let's take some medium beige, some white, and some of our blue here. Makes a beautiful kind of gray color. And it's a gray that'll go with the sky and everything else here. And I'm going to start painting him here. So a little open medium, start painting him right up in here with some texture. Now he's the most forward guy. So I'm going to put a bit more detail into some of him than I did on her, or the other one that I'll do right there. Just a little bit more. So, because he's forward, right? He is forward here. So, and he'll have this, and I kind of lost a little round part of his tail there, so I'll just draw it back in. Some of his body here, right down through here. There are just some beautiful colors on him. And he gets that real green head, but we're keeping everything soft here, so I'm going to soften out his green head a little bit so it isn't as neon as it could be. Just a little pine green and medium beige. So not quite as neon as I could do it. And let's add a little dark and stuff to the front here. That's kind of neat. And just taps of color, guys. Don't get wrapped up in a bunch of detail. Just do little taps of color. That's all he really needs to suggest him. Okay? Just little taps of color here. And that's what we're doing, is we're just suggesting him. A little dark here. There we go. Some of that dark, a little bit more on the burnt sienna side, right down through here, right out towards his little tail feathers there, up underneath there. A little color, a little yellow, white, and medium beige here. Some small marks through his body. This little tiny, this is a number 4. A 2 or a 4, a little soft. It's not soft, it's a springiness to it for the synthetic. Just works great. It's working just great. Let's put a bit of that shadow here. Shows the curvature of his wing here. There we go. And some of that light, it's right here, curvature of his wing down. A little bit of texture, maybe just a bit on him. It helps pop that forward. Maybe a little light, or a little line of it right through his center of his body here. There. Right in there. Some of that light coming out here. And I'm not going to get detailed on the feathers. I don't want to get that much, so I'm not going to go in there with all kinds of feathery strokes. We'll just let that stay soft. Let's pull the light edge, or excuse me, the darker shadow edge there, right? We're going to pull some light, though. We're not going to do individual feathers, but we're going to pull to get the feeling of them through the light and the dark there. like that. And that blue and burnt sienna is working really, really well, giving me exactly what it is that I want here. That bit of that color and the feel of that here. A little bit out here. Here we go. That's pretty. And maybe that, right, he's going to have that white ring, but he has a little dark right there. Right there. And a little touch of the light. Stable my hand here. A little touch of that white ring right there. And, you know, I don't like it to like be super textured or perfect, so sometimes I'll just tap into that and soften that out here. It could be a little bit higher. I might be just a touch low there. And so then let's just take some of this dark and clean it up, paint up towards it there, right there, like that. And I'm not going to give him an eye or anything like that because that's just too much detail on him. But yeah, little bits here, maybe a few little ideas of some feathery strokes there. But again, you know, I like, you know, some of the wildlife painters that just give the impression of them and keep everything super simplistic. I like that because then the viewer can paint the details into them. I think that works great. So I'll paint a little bit of that and a little bit here. Let's put that light shape right up there. Right up there like that. See, that gives him some just super casual that look. And so we don't have to be too detailed. I want these strokes to kind of work in together here. So he's standing out because he's got a lot of texture on him, and that's what I want. Now, let's take some medium, some Diarylide. We'll come right through here, and we'll make like his feet coming down, because that's what's happening here. One in the front and the back. And they're quite bright. You know, you see them as quite bright. I got a little bit of texture on there, which I like. And I'll just widen that base just a bit. It's just taking off. And where did I put that? We'll grab a little bit more because I want a tiniest bit more up here on him. Up on his beak. It's a lot of little detail. I maybe shouldn't, but I'm just going to. There we go. That looks pretty good. I like the way that looks. Let's pull that front wing here. There we go. Down a bit. Yeah, see, I don't do the individual feathers out there because it's not really going with the look. So this, you know, a bit more texture, kind of like what I'm doing here. Matter of fact, let's go one more time here. A little bit, yeah, boy, that works. See, leave that like that little bead of texture right there. Now, see, the sad thing is it's acrylic. Some of it will go away, but you just do it again if it goes away too much. I like that. And let's build just a bit of that right in here. There, like that. There goes the sirens. So let's just pop that right in there. That's good. That's very impressionistic on him. I kind of like that. And I don't think I'll put like a you know, any kind of whatsoever of a, you know, face or anything on him. I won't do that. This is going to be the other guy. He's got a little rounding light right here to his tail. Here. He's going to have, because you're looking at the back of his wing, so he'll have that beautiful light and green bands of color here. And we might see a bit of that right up there. And we'll just start painting him the same way. Give him a bit of the yellow there onto his beak. I like that little bit. Let's go a little more here. There. And let's do that blue and green and a little bit of blue here. If you want a really, really glowy green, take Hansa Yellow with the tiniest, tiniest bit of phthalo, and you will get a glowy green. I don't want one on here, but if you want one, that's how you would get it. And it's very nice. It's a beautiful color. I'm just going to take a little green and blue here and put in that. We'll put in a little touch of the light edge of those colors. There, that's pretty good. Soft little light edge to his head here. There, right there. A little bit of dark up into the front. Bit of burnt sienna with that so that dark doesn't get too glowy. So you add that blue. Burnt sienna is really kind of a common kind of color here. Here we go. But that's I like this one a little better where I use even some of the pine green in there. So I'm just going to soften that out a bit here. And maybe even a little bit of medium beige into it. So it's not quite so glowy there. There we go. And we're going to burnt sienna, a little brown, touch of blue maybe. We're just going to simplistically, his wings come up into a little bit of a V shape here because he's pulling up. And just whisper that on there like that. And into the back, maybe a bit of light back here. Back there. Some of the dark, that's right along his back. Burnt sienna, blue. Some of the dark here. There, like that. And yeah, just a bit. Here, a bit of light right back up onto the top. And we'll pull the flight feathers here on the wing. Suggestions of them, right? We want suggestions of them. On the photo, on the reference photo, you see the individual primaries here, individual feathers of the primary. So we could do a little bit of that, but, you know, again, that's might be too much, but we'll leave that and see. Then I'll just put a little light, very casual painting here. Just so we casually suggest them. We're not putting a bit of that back there. We're casually suggesting him taking off there. Yeah, and that little light band here on the edge has that nice light band here. Set this right up at the top. There. You know, when you're impressionistic painting, I mean, you let the edges here kind of, you know, you're not perfect with any of your edges, you know, and so you can blur out your edges and let things happen, and that's where you get this beautiful impressionism. So I'm going to use the brush on edge here and just drag color through, and that's going to give me more impressionism of him here. He doesn't have to be perfect here. I like that better. And, you know, I thought originally of making them like a fold and fold, but then it was too much. I like this, you know, when they're bending their wings up and folding. That is so pretty. A little bit of that light blue pulling through there. It's kind of neat. Let's put a little bit of that into him. You know, that light blue looks kind of neat right there. All right. So that's, you know, we can do more to him, and I might after I go back. And usually what I do is, you know, I'll finish up everything and I'll sit down and then I'll look at it with a cup of coffee and look at it and say, okay, maybe a little touch here, a little touch there, and, you know, and kind of correct him up. So I might edge up, you know, like that. I just drug a soft and then that helped recede that. I might touch in, like right here, a little more white right up here like this, bringing out his tail feathers just a little bit more. You know, things like that. Just little touches, but never big things, because I do the big things during the painting. So that looks pretty good. And he'll have just an idea. His feet are starting to fold back up a little bit more. So we just want to give a impression of them there. And her feet are way pulled back because she's already into flight here. She's already pulled back the landing gear. So she's already in flight, right? So that's pretty good there. So now let's come back. So we have some of this real loose area up in here. And I want to do more of it here. I want to do some more putting this on, working light colors, some yellows, medium beige here. Model some of this together with some lights here. We're going to use our paper towel. We're going to use the edge of this little brush here. So in other words, and I love to do this. This is one of my favorite things to do, is kind of like skip the colors through like this, right? And then I love to use the paper towel to create that, you know, just like you see me do all the time with the prairie grass, pulls that light through it like that. But sometimes I'll use those other brushes, and sometimes I'll do that. This is also a really great brush, one that I made, that I took a round brush, I crimped it down flat, and then I took some scissors and cut out a lot of it to make, you know, individual brushes like this, the hairs that I can make, you know, into some various grasses and stuff there like that. So, you know, and I'll use all of these in combinations, all of these combinations here. So if I get something on and looks a little heavy, I pull through with the paper towel like this, and then it looks like you know what you're doing. So you can put some of that on like that and then just pull through with the paper towel, and it looks really great. Or just some little tiny bits here, right? Some little tiny bits here around like that, and build that. And then I will even come back up through here and just tap little bits here, little bits. And this is going to take a while. This is what I'm going to do. Take a while doing that. I might put in some more darks and some more lights, but I'm just going to do this, working some different colors. And the thing is, I might come back like this, guys, which is, don't be afraid to do this either. Take some, even burnt sienna and a little bit of Diarylide. It's really pretty. And come back and add some, you know, different yellows like this. See that beautiful yellow, that golden glow there. Add some of that through. And if you don't want to blur it too much, let this yellow dry up a bit. Sometimes add open medium to it. That gives a little bit of transparency. That causes the color to slide a little bit more. And it's great on, you know, longer grasses. You know, try some different variations, you know, to get some of these different looks, right? Some of these, yeah. And so I'm going to do this just with that, and I'll use my paper towel. Sometimes I'll use the knife. The thing is to put in as many variations as possible, and I'll start building this, okay? And then we'll come back and I'll show you some of the finishing little stuff, okay? All right, I'll see you in a minute. Hi everyone, welcome back. Well, I put some more here on it in some of those darks, working in some of the darks. I don't think I'm going to do, I mean, what I could. And you could give a little bit of a ground line if you want. I like the look of the marsh. I like that back through here. So I don't think I'm going to do that too much. I added a little bit more right into here to the ducks and stuff. And I softened her back wing right back here. Took a little bit of the sky, pushed it back over to back wing. I think I was getting a little bit too much. Now, as far as, lights and darks, and I was thought, well, maybe I'll put some long ones up here, reeds and stuff on it. And I thought, no, I really do like the journey. I want to reinforce some of the journey back through here. I think that would really look nice. I got too much of a horizontal plane here. I want to bring the mountain down just a little bit. Let's do some of that just so you can see some of the differences in it, and then make some final decisions about the light. But overall, I added some dark over here, and I kind of like that. But let's work on that. We go back towards our violet a bit here, and some browns in those violets. And we don't have to have the same color. You don't have to have that. Let me see. I'm going to be close, probably a little light, but pretty close. Yep. And I'm just going to just drag that through, and I had some lunch, and I completely value my daughter's opinion on everything. And she's out here right now with us. And I said, what do you think? And she goes, no, I really like it as it is. And I don't want to add too much more. I showed her the regular clouds there. She agreed with me it was going to be too much. So, but it's a good way to, if you have some friends and stuff around and family, ask them. Sometimes, we don't quite know, and, and it's nice to ask. I'm going to add a little bit of light so I can work. She thought, don't do too much on the back mountain because, yeah, it's working back there. But I do want to pull like this little journey right back here, back this side a little bit more, and, coming this way here. So I'll put that in first, and then I'll put in and so you can come back and work all of this, decide, how much interest and stuff you want. So see, I'm creating this going around the corner here. That's kind of what I wanted to do. You could create it going back up along this valley here if you want to do that. It's just so much fun. Once you get the idea of depth and the technique, you could go back and work it several times, but, and add as much as you want here. Just use the brush a bit on the edge and add a few little marks and stuff, and you'll just slowly add, more details to it. And I like that. But don't worry, you can do light and dark. But overall, when you look at that, that's a combination of several different, photos and stuff put together. So, of course, you're going to have to probably make some alterations when you go do your own to decide what it is that you want to do. So you can add, as much as you want and work on it. I got a little too much of a line here. Let's just soften that, bring that back out with a little bit of highlight. See, and it's such a great way to just tap through and add last little lights or interest, or maybe a second little ridge line right there. You just add an extra little bit, and you looking at it and decide what it is that you want to do. And I'll keep that soft. I like that. Maybe a bit of that light pulling right up there. I like to get really strong. I've always talked in landscapes, I put in strong verticals and horizontals, which really dictate the linear perspective. Linear perspective is the lines and stuff that can go through your landscape. So linear perspective is really important. And so we'll just put a little bit of light here to say that. And yeah, it's great. Now, final wise, do you want, this one, this thing, you let a little bit of paint, like I let a little bit of paint dry up, and so it stiffens it up. And if you just take some of your yellow, some of your white, model it up a little bit, maybe a little open medium into it, even slightly stiffer, so that it keeps the brush hairs open like this, and you can use that into tapping in. Just hold the brush different, run it around like this, and you will get all kinds of different little lights here. You see, and they're all different. That's the beautiful thing of it. They're all different, and you can, add as much interest and stuff that you want with that. But here, some of these lights pulling right in here, maybe a little bit more medium beige with it. If you go back up over here, and some difference. And you get too much, like I just pushed and got too much there, I just take it off with some of the paper towel and create those. And the marks, this is how I love to do the prairie. When I paint my westerns and stuff, I love the prairie this way, and because it gives on a lot of interest without taking away too much from your subject. So I want to get some of this interest in there without taking away too much from this guy as they're heading off in through there. And I like that. So, and those are just, inexpensive little brushes and lots of tools. But I love the palette knife and working with the paper towel and everything like that. So I could add, I'll look at it here. I could maybe lighten him up just a bit. He looks a little bit stuck on. Well, when something looks stuck on under there, you need to relax some of the edges. And, sometimes I will take my finger with a little bit of water, and this painting is new still. So see, I can blur the edges out, and that blurring of the edges helps him recede just a little bit into those edges. This one, I'm not quite so sure too much. I think it's going to be okay to leave it like that. I like that. I like the heavier bit of light up into the front, but that's all going to be your choices here. So I'm going to put just a touch more of that light right in there like that. That's good. Gives him a little bit more stuff going on there. But we'll do more of these. I've had quite a few requests to do more of the wildlife bird paintings and stuff, and we'll do that. If you like that, make sure that you go down and you give a like to it. Make sure that you comment. If you like the channel, please help our channel out by liking and commenting. That really does help. We try to do the lessons as free as possible. Those of you that are part of the membership and stuff, I will put more finished photos of this. And of course, we added some newer videos over there for you guys as well. So you'll have those in there. So, but we really appreciate your supporting of the channel. And we try to do as much as we can, as free as possible. But we all have bills too, right? Okay. So any support you got to the channel, just even the liking and helping us with those videos, we really truly appreciate it. Okay. And I have another floral that I am going to paint tomorrow over onto the other Paint It Simply channel. So I'm going to do another floral over there, and then the Western. I have a new Western out that I'll be painting with that one, and we'll go back to some study. So, and like always, if there's something that you want to see, make sure you drop it into the comments, and we'll work it into our filming schedule, okay? With that, thank you very much, guys, and I hope you enjoy it and give it a try. And if you want, come over to our Academies of Decorative Paint, or Academies of Art over on Facebook, and post your photos and, share it with everybody and talk to it. We're fast approaching 2,000 people over there, so it's a lot of fun. All right? Okay, I'll see you guys on the next one.